It is the Blitz here on San Antonio Sports Star, ESPN AM 1250, 103.3 FM, online, sasportstar.com. He is Joe Reinagel. I'm Jason Minix. Our good buddy RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com joining us now, and he's looking like he had a hell of a weekend, too, unshaven, wearing a T-shirt today as he recovers from the draft marathon. How you doing, RJ?
I'm still trembling from all the coffee and root beer I've chugged over the weekend. At some point, I had a pulled pork sandwich, a bunch of wings, and I think I slipped in a strawberry yogurt one night around midnight. If it was Mountain Dew instead of coffee, I'd say I was in high school playing Halo, but things are a little bit different.
I think you're doing pretty well. Pulled pork sandwich, some wings, strawberry yogurt. I mean, that sounds pretty good to me.
I've had worse experience. I spent the 2018 draft as an example with Jason. So, it can be worse.
Yeah.
Well, that draft, we're all celebrating tacos, and that didn't sit well. They were Dairy Queen quality tacos.
Thankfully, no Taco Charleston this year. But not a whole lot to write home about, which is difficult when you have to literally write a bunch of articles about it.
RJ, now I was in Memphis over the weekend, so it was there was
a bunch of bands outside the Grizzlies game.
Yeah, it was fun. So it was the first time that I haven't watched the draft hours on end, every pick, and then reacting to it and who's next. So it was a different draft experience for me because I would look and see who the Cowboys took, who went right before them, who went after. Then I would think about that, and then I'd go find different reactions to it. And that's an interesting social experiment. The one thing that I learned is you hate everything. If they did not pick who you thought they were going to pick, they were just dead wrong and should all be taken out back and shot in the head.
Well, you sound like every one of my Twitter mentions, first of all. But second of all, if you don't do what I say, I think it's stupid. That's just like a mantra for my life. I think the Cowboys had a fine draft. And, the point I made, I think I think relative to consensus boards, they reached with their first two picks. And say what you will, like those players could obviously develop into the two best players in the whole class. And obviously if that's true, then, consensus boards, consensus boards. But so everyone's like trying to pat the Cowboys on the back, like, hey, they filled these needs. Cool. Yeah, they filled the need in the first round that they created by letting Connor Williams walk. And they filled the need in the second round that they created by not getting the deal done with Randy Gregory. And they filled the need in the third round that they created by trading away Amari Cooper. So, yeah, I mean, congratulations to them. But this is a team that's been wandering in the desert for however long, and they spent some months digging holes. So, like, I'm not going to credit them for filling these holes back up. Like, these are their decisions. These are self-made issues that they've had. And so, I wrote about that today. I think that, this was it, right? Like, oh, nobody panic. The Cowboys are a great drafting team. Just wait till the draft. Don't freak out about free agency. They're not a better team. They're a team that has regressed from a roster standpoint. Sure, they could win the NFC East, but there's a lot of history that they're fighting, and now they're fighting it with a lesser roster from a quality standpoint. So is the sky falling? No, but for a team that was so close last year, it doesn't feel like they understand that when you're close, you have to press and double down even harder.
Well, we've been talking a lot about that, RJ, over the last couple of weeks, how it's time to change your strategy and go all in. Some of the guys that you mentioned, though, Randy Gregory, okay, I'm okay with him leaving. I really am. I'm okay with him leaving. I just think that the way that all was handled, and I'm not sure that he's the real deal over the course. He had one good season. All right, let's face it. I mean, the guy's had one good season, so I'm okay with that. I don't know about Tyler Smith. He's got a lot of problems. Sam Williams, I'm not sure. He's got a lot of problems, but some of these guys, and I'm just not sad to see them go and be replaced, and let's roll the dice.
And that's fine. That's fair, right? Like you want to move on from Randy Gregory. Okay, cool. And you want to draft somebody to give yourself a long-term solution. That makes sense. Well, then, go get Zadarius Smith. Nobody's saying you had to get Von Miller, but go get somebody else to supplement things, but they're just kind of, assuming the status quo is going to be enough. You started that question by saying, like, they need to do things differently. There's a line in the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin where one of the friends is talking to Steve Carell, and Steve Carell's obviously had some down luck with women, to that point of the movie, and he says, "Look, man, because Steve Carell says that just doesn't feel right to me," and the guy says, "Look, man, what you're doing hasn't been working.
Yep.
So maybe you need to try some wrong." And, and that's kind of where the Cowboys are at. Like, okay, great. You believe in the draft and you believe in not spending in free agency. And I don't believe that those are reasons for their lack of a Super Bowl over the last 30 years or whatever. But I mean, I do believe it's heavily responsible for the last decade's worth of a drought. And there's also some other extracurricular things like weird luck and Dez caught it and a 3rd and 20 conversion and whatever. But I mean, they are seriously assuming that everything's going to be the same just because they want it to be. They are very likely going to regress defensively just because that's the way that all great defenses perform the next year. Micah's probably not going to get 1 million sacks. Trayvon's not going to get 1 million interceptions. And you're probably not going to get as many turnovers overall. So you had to get some impact players here right now. In your first 2 picks, Tyler Smith could be awesome. Sam Williams, he told us he wants to go by D. Williams, by the way. He could be awesome. But those things aren't happening or developing here in 2022. So you're just kind of hoping. You were struck by lightning last year, and you literally are going to the same place on Earth and just like looking up at the clouds and saying, "I'm ready, strike me again."
RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com joining us here on The Blitz on San Antonio Sports Star. RJ, devil's advocate. Generally speaking, after the draft, Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl. The attitude feels so different this year. I don't know. I feel like a Jets fan today or a Browns fan where after every draft, you just, the Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Oh, how'd they screw this whole thing up? Maybe it is different. I mean, when you go to H-E-B, do you buy all name brands or do you pick up some Hill Country Fair items?
I mix and match, and I don't, I love H-E-B, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you got to go to, Kroger, you got to go to, back in the day.
We don't have those here
or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm a citizen of the world, but to your point, I mean, like, you're not even the Jets. Like the Jets feel great today.
Yeah, they do. And how unusual is that?
Well, but like, and so there's a great YouTube video. It's an old YouTube video of this Cleveland Browns fan. He's yelling at us where the term "factor of sadness" came from. And he's telling the state, and he says, "Do you realize that it is actually statistically harder to be this consistently bad than it would be for you to sometimes accidentally, occasionally be good?" And to your point, like, just the general like stroke of luck would dictate that, like, okay, the Jets are on the come up. We've seen the Bills be on the come up. Like, all these kind of down on their luck franchises have had their moment in the sun, except for the Dallas Cowboys. And so, I mean, you're right. It kind of feels that way, but it should feel that way. I mean, they're not great right now. Their roster is worse off. And I would love to sit here and put lipstick on this pick for you, but they're not in the business of making that happen. I mean, in their post-draft press conference, one of the first things Stephen Jones did in talking about why they didn't draft a running back was say, well, we'll see what next year looks like. Zeke's making a lot of money. Dude, what are you doing throwing this out there? Like, yeah, we all know that, but like, that's so much awkward tension that you are unnecessarily creating to hover over this season that already is carrying so much expectation.
RJ, when you look at it, and speaking of trying things different, I mean, look at what Tampa Bay did. They win a Super Bowl. They loaded up. You look at what the Rams did. They loaded up, and they're still loading up, and they're the defending Super Bowl champions. Then I look at what Philadelphia did. Talk about having a pretty good weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles are a much better team right now than they were last year.
Well, you mentioned approaching things differently, and the Eagles have tried and tried and tried to draft and find a star wide receiver. Jalen Reagor didn't work out. Even Nelson Aguilar, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, none of those players worked out. They've spent some premium capital on those receivers to try to establish a legitimate aerial threat. Devonta Smith, Heisman Trophy winner from 2 years ago now, looked awesome as a rookie. We'll see if he develops. And the Eagles, a lot of people thought, okay, they're going to draft one of these top wide receivers. The Eagles said, you know what? This is hard. This is really difficult to figure out who these good guys are going to be and who's going to be good or not. Let's just go get a proven commodity. Let's go get A.J. Brown because we're going to change up the way things go. We're not just going to keep banging on the same thing, hoping it opens loose for us because this time we think it'll be different. So I think the Eagles are a really proactive franchise. I think there are a lot of them out there in different ways. But that's the thing, like there's nothing that the Cowboys are doing that screams they're proactive. And that's not to say that just because they aren't making big trades that they're not, a functional franchise, but they are a status quo, do the bare minimum sort of thing franchise. I mean, consider it. They haven't traded up in a draft in 2 years. This draft featured like 1,000 trades. The Cowboys have not traded up in a draft in 2 years. It was the fourth round in 2020 when they traded incidentally with the Eagles to get Tyler Biadasz. But since then, they've only traded once, and it was back last year. Thankfully, it landed in Micah Parsons. But they just sit, they wait, they make their pick, and then they expect the brand to kind of carry them all the way home.
RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com joining us here on the Blitz. So now that you've told us how much you love their first round pick, and I mean love, kid's got some issues. He had penalty problems at Tulsa. I'm going to guess he's going to see stiffer competition at the NFL level than he did while he was in college at Tulsa. We got rid of the Connors because of penalties, right? Where is your confidence level that Joe Philbin and Jeff Blasco can coach these guys up, can coach Smith up to not commit penalties?
I mean, people make fun of Terrence Steele, but they did take an undrafted free agent and turn him into a viable, NFL tackle, and they turned him into a viable enough one that they believe that he's worth moving on from Lyle Collins because Lyle, pissed them off too many times. I mean, there's no question. That's Mike McCarthy's thing. Like dating back to his time in Green Bay, is taking these like cast-off offensive linemen and turning them into superstars. So, okay, cool. What can we do with this guy who has a lot of potential, who needs to clean some things up? Sure. I mean, I'd say like on a 1 to 10 scale, it's probably like at a 7. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's possible now. And I hate to be like a prisoner of the moment, but that's who this team is. Unless they truly are setting themselves up for this sort of soft rebuild and they're not being public about it. But I don't buy into conspiracy theories at all. You guys know that, but like it is so difficult to look at their entire offseason and not intellectually come away with the idea that they are setting themselves up for Sean Payton or somebody else in the future. They really do kind of feel like they are purposefully tearing this thing down to a degree to save money. For what? Like you're saving what? Like there's no follow-up to all of their madness, so to speak. There is no directive that we can understand everything being pointed toward. And so to that point, sure, I feel like they can develop him maybe over the life of his rookie contract, but odds are that is going to take some time, and they do not have that. I mean, Tyron Smith's going to miss time this year, right? So now you got this Tulsa product out there with who at left tackle? Josh Ball, last year's 4th-round pick. I mean, so he's next to a center who you're already not confident enough in. So, I mean, you're putting him in the most volatile possible situation. And then we're going to be sitting here in November. He's going to get run over and Dak's going to fumble off of a sack, or we're going to be, cussing him out when this was all kind of preventable. I mean, they should. I maintain that Connor Williams gets a bad rap for the penalty thing. That he is going to be so sorely missed. And every Cowboys fan is going to bite their tongue wishing that he was gone.
But RJ, Jerry Jones showed us that Tyler Smith, they had him ranked higher than all those other offensive linemen that went before. He even turned his card around and showed us. You don't believe Jerry Jones?
So, look, I love Will McClay, but this comes back to him because anything, and I, in a very, very small way, I feel badly for Jerry Jones, just like in an objective way, because anything that goes wrong with the Cowboys is Jerry or Steven's fault. It's never Will McClay's fault. Will McClay is only responsible for sunshine and rainbow and roses when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. But you know who puts that board together? Will McClay and his staff. And if that's truly the case, and I'm not going to pretend to be like some evaluator, like I grinded and crushed the tape on all these interior offensive linemen, but the people who are professionals at this, the Dane Bruglers and Daniel Jeremiahs and Todd McShays of the world, I mean, if Will McClay is truly that visionary, that he saw something that every standard professional in the business missed, then I hope he drags us into oblivion forever. Roast me, Will McClay. Tell me how wrong I was. But again, the overwhelming likelihood here is that the Cowboys fell in love with the prospect, misevaluated him to the point that they led themselves to making this sequence of decisions.
It's going to be interesting to see, and we won't know for a while if it was a good pick or a bad pick. We'll see. RJ, is there a pick on the board that you just absolutely love?
Jalen Tolbert. I mean, that's their best value pick. I mean, and it's a wide receiver. So
did you know who Jalen Tolbert was before the draft?
Of course I did. No, I mean, he went to a small school, but he went to a small school on purpose. He had Power 5 offers, but he wanted to play baseball. So, South Alabama was the only school that said, hey, you can play baseball here. He's awesome. He's one of the most productive receivers in college football a year ago. I mean, so Jalen Tolbert was a name we loved. It never made sense that they were really going to walk away with a Traylon Burks or Chris Olave. So, there was a hodgepodge of dudes we were targeting for the Cowboys on day 2, George Pickens, Sky Moore. That was never felt likely either. But to get Jalen Tolbert in the 3rd round, you wish that they would have, I wish they would have taken Jermaine Johnson at 24 instead of Tyler Smith and then come back later and gotten their interior offensive lineman. But, they put together their class the way they did and they feel confident. They do have a solid track record at developing offensive linemen. But that's the most annoying thing in my Twitter mentions for the last few days is like they reached, I remember people saying they reached on Travis Frederick too. Yeah, I know. That's
Jason
cool.
Minnick say that?
Happened before.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like people love to say that, but like we could find examples to like prove and justify anything. Like they reached on Taco Charlton. That didn't work out. So we'll see.
I just want you to know that for the last 2 hours, RJ, that's exactly the excuse that Jason Minnick has been giving here all day. That we said the same thing about Travis Frederick. Same thing, and look how he turned out.
Even if the situations were apples to
even
apples,
if I almost said it that way.
They picked up a 3rd-round pick trading back. They traded back. They themselves recognized that Travis was not the value for the pick that they originally had in 2013. And they didn't do that here. They fell in love. They got tunnel vision. They got stuck. They took their guy. He's a really fun, charming young man. Had the butthole line and everything on Friday, and that was really funny. But, like, other than that, I mean, there's not a lot to write home about. And you know what? And I won't write about this because our readers will get upset. Them giving him number 73, it's cool. It's awesome. But that's their, like, attempt to get everybody to shut up.
Yeah.
Like, how do we distract people? Legacy. Talk about the greatness of the Cowboys. Here, give him number 73, Larry Allen, part 2.
I just can't wait till we're in Oxnard and you're trying to get this kid and you're going to tell him how much you love him. It's definitely a reach, and I 100% agree with that. They went need instead of best player available, where in years past they went best player available regardless of what the needs are. I feel like Mike McCarthy had more influence on this draft than any previous that he's been involved in, and maybe more influence from the head coaching position than we've seen in a long time. And I know that's throwing Jason Garrett under the bus, but it's always felt like Jerry was running the show. But this draft does not feel like a Jerry draft.
Well, I really hope that McCarthy wasn't as involved as is presented, because that would be really dumb if you're the Cowboys ownership and you really do feel like you might be moving on from him in a year. That would be silly to let him kind of put his hands all over this. And what's more is, I hope Tyler Smith is awesome, because there is I would say we all think at least legitimate possibility that he's their last 1st-round pick for a while. I mean, if you look at the compensation that the Saints gave the Eagles to move up earlier in this offseason before they, danced around on Thursday night, they gave up a 1st-round pick next year and a 2nd-round pick the following year. So you have to imagine that they believe that they're going to recoup that capital when they ultimately trade away Sean Payton. So that seems to be the starting point, from a price standpoint for Sean Payton. So, I mean, it's going to at least involve your 1st-round pick next year. So I hope Tyler Smith lasts a good while.
That's a good way to put it. And maybe Sean Payton was on the phone during this whole thing secretly with Jerry Jones.
That's what I meant. This feels like a Sean Payton draft.
Sean Payton's a small school dude, Eastern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so Tulsa. Who can anybody name Tulsa's mascot off the top of their head?
Hurricanes.
Citizen Pledge.
Hurricanes.
Golden Wave.
Yeah, well,
I mean, come on, man. It's where Drew Pearson went to college.
Hey, the Cowboys drafted a Tulsa player 2 years ago, Reggie Robinson. They cut him earlier this offseason, but, hey, whatever, water under the bridge.
Well, Reggie's gone.
Yeah, they cut him. They gave him the injury designation.
I'm kidding. I knew that.
Is there a lot of hurricanes in Tulsa?
I don't think so, but it's a golden hurricane, so maybe that's different.
No, Tornado Alley. Yeah, that seems kind of stupid. Why would you say hurricanes when it's Tornado Alley?
Oh, it's good to see RJ fired up. I like it.
I know, man. Salty RJ needs a nap.
look, I'm going to take a walk with the dog, and now the walks involve a stroller. So it's a whole process, the whole thing. We got to have the little fan going and everything. So, maybe I'll feel better after that. But I've got some crawfish at Touffet that I've got ready for dinner too. So
Nice.
Seriously? I just knew you were going to Chick-fil-A.
You know what? That's tomorrow's lunch, Jason. Don't spoil it. All right?
Well, I know you didn't get it yesterday, so I figured you double dipped on a Monday.
Well, I didn't eat it yesterday because I was living vicariously through you in your beloved Instagram stories. Seriously, like, when do you sleep? You're just traveling the world.
I was on a 6 a.m. flight.
Oh, by the way, I saw. How was your first TikTok that you made? That looks cool.
Now I was a part of TikTok. I did not make the TikTok.
No, you were the subject piece. Let's not sell it short.
I've been in a TikTok now, but I've yet to make a TikTok.
That's next, though.
We're elaborate.
But I tell you what, if you go to the EDM Maniacs page where my daughter works and posted it, I don't know if you saw that one or just the one that I did, but in the EDM world, my wife and I are kind of rock stars, and people thought we were pretty cool. A couple, not really, but I was impressed with the comments. I was almost afraid to look.
Let's get you two, Tyler Smith, at a rave and just see what happens.
I don't know that I want to go to a rave with that dude. Just saying. For a variety of reasons.
He could block for you. You wouldn't be hurt.
This is true. This is true. But
he's a big man.
But if he started going nuts, man, we'd all die. That's what I'm saying. RJ, go for your walk.
Hey, shout out to the Jets and shout out to the Texans. They had an awesome draft. So,
Who?
Des caught it.
The Texans had a draft?
They did.
Oh.
The Texans couldn't have gotten it wrong. They needed everything. So, by the way, the Titans got an A from everybody that's in the know. Just saying. Thought I'd throw that out there.